You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for a little show we like to call around these parts the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever exciting, ever scintillating Options Insider Radio Network. Of course, you guys can get at us on pretty much every platform under the sun. If you listen on demand, as I know a lot of you do, we just ask that if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. It is, we've been doing this for a long time, 15 years. We kind of created the original Options podcast, so we got this ball rolling all these years ago. But you could argue that the reviews that come in now are way more important even than they were 10, 15 years ago because so many new people are discovering the content right now. So if you've been listening for a while, you haven't left a review, or if you're new and you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. It does help all your fellow newcomers find our stuff and enjoy it and click on it and subscribe with confidence. Of course, speaking of subscribing, if you want to go above and beyond, join us on the live throughout the week, as well as, of course, on the Pro Q&As. Had the great Flow Master joining us this week. What a far-reaching discussion we had with him. That was really fun. You guys really took it to 11 with your questions, as always. And, of course, coming up tomorrow, Options Oddities. What crazy money has the Rock Lobster made or thrown away, or both of us? We shall find out. On Options Oddities tomorrow, as well as, of course, all the unusual activity for the week. There's some stuff popping off again this week, as you might imagine. If you want to check all that out, theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. Remember, just me and you talking here. Don't tell your friends. It's a secret. And, of course, however you listen, keep sending in those questions, those comments. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. And let's see who we're hearing from on ye old program today. First off, let's go out to the quiet, the sleepy, nay, the tranquil hamlet known as St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program once again, sir.
Always happy to be here. Last show, I believe the last show before Valentine's Day.
Is that a big day in the TOSAW household? You line up the flowers and the chocolates and the whole 9 yards. You that kind of guy, Uncle Mike?
No, it means nothing. I don't know why you even said it.
I was just going to say, is that a big line of demarcation, the year pre and post Valentine's Day? That's how Uncle Mike sees the year, listeners. All right, let's go out to the land that Valentine's forgot, a.k.a. the shores of Maine. He's too busy, diehard cynic. He ain't got time for no Valentine's Day. He is the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the program. And do you too pshaw at the very notion of Valentine's Day, sir?
I did not push on, although I do buy my wife a selection of chocolates because she likes them. So I get them for her, and there you go. It makes life much smoother for the next several weeks, having that supply of delicious, tasty chocolates at hand fingers reach.
Buying her off with some tasty chocolates. I can see that. It makes a certain amount of sense. Let's see if these markets make some sense. Probably not, as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck we are trading out here, listeners. And today, markets are kind of dominated by one thing. That is going to be CPI, aka inflation. If you want to get a deeper dive, of course, into all things inflation and how they impact the rates complex. Luckily for you, we got a great guest joining us on TWIFO in a little over an hour who lives and breathes all things rates. So a good week to be chatting with them. I'm going to dive deep into all this fun. You guys have been asking for kind of a rates deep dive for a while. So never let it be said I don't listen to the listeners. So that's coming up on TWIFO. And of course, when I get into it again here on the option block, it's kind of hard to avoid this week because CPI coming in like a beast. The numbers coming in for January now up to 7.5%. I mean, these are levels we have not seen since really the dark days of the late 70s, early 80s out there where inflation was double digits and everything was crazy. You know, gas lines, all sorts of madness. Not quite there on the gas lines yet, though. Maybe if oil keeps rallying a bit, we shall see. But intriguing stuff. That kind of took a bit of a clip to the market. Then as the market is wont to do, it kind of decided, nah, I don't like being down here anymore. I'm going to rally again. And it kind of rallied, started getting some nice little momentum to the upside, and then kind of just lost all momentum again. The BTFD crowd, at least for now, seems to have withered and died, and now it's back to the dark side. Most of the major indices off 0.75%, if not more. The Dow's the only laggard, off about 0.6%. S&P and NASDAQ both off at that 0.75%, if not more level. Now, that means coming into showtime, we are seeing VIX start to claw back some of those losses it had. It was down nearly 2 points earlier in the session. Now, when we kicked off the show, it was off about 1.5 points at about a 22 even. We saw VVIX at about a 125. Weirdly enough, that's unched from our last show on Monday. So VVIX gave some up and got it back. And now it's right back to unched on Monday's level, which I think, as you recall, I think is what my prediction was for VALE this week as well. We shall see tomorrow when that plays out. And the crystal ball, VXX at about a 19.5 when we kicked off the show. That puts it down an even point from where it was on Monday's show. Of course, if this sell-off continues, it's still about 19, a little bit north of that now. This sell-off continues and VALE keeps firming up a little bit. I would expect maybe some of those losses to be paired. UVXY was at about a 13 when we kicked off the show. That puts it down 1.25 points, which makes sense. It should outpace VXX a little bit to the downside, and already starting to give some of that back as well. And VALQ, aka the at-the-money vol, the NASDAQ 100, when we commenced the program at a 24 even, that puts it down a little over 3, about 3.25 points from where it was this time last show. So the narrative for VALE for most of the week has been down. Today, we may start changing that narrative. Should be interesting. Let's go out to the land of the guy who loves to get on the boat with the 10-year note, a.k.a. Mr. Uncle Mike. Mr. Uncle Mike, a lot to unpack in Uncle Mike Town. Not so much an Uncle Mike type of day from a broad market perspective, but the rates complex also very much in the crosshairs today. What's lighting up your tape out there in this high CPI kind of day?
Well, of course, the 10-year note, we're having a sell-off in that. Looks like we've bottomed out for where it's gone to for the current day. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it can't go any further down. But that's one thing. It's the fear of raising interest rates. There's talk of there could be a 25-point rate hike. 25 basis point rate hike in March, as well as a 50. The concern, of course, is that it's going to be a 50. That's the big news right now. It looked like inflation was higher than what they had estimated that it would be. And so what's unique about this is that the stock market, it sold off at first on the news, then it came back, and then now we're selling off again. So we're not near the levels with which we were, but we are selling again. So I don't know if the market's necessarily that fearful of it, because if this number is as bad as you're saying it is, then we should be down more than 0.8%, I would think. So that's one thing with which I'm noticing. With the 10-year being above 2% again, I mean, this is why I sell calls on my 10-year note holdings, and so I'll be. I have orders out to close out some short calls with that, and I'll probably be rolling them down. Just because of the fact that even if it does snap back, I'll probably do a call spread or something along those lines in case the note does snap back. But for right now, I still have open orders to buy to close the short calls on my bond holdings for clients. So looking at that. And then, of course, we have things that are coming up with this marketplace. The main thing that I'm seeing coming up is that we might make another run down at 4,500 for the S&P. That's a key number with which we have right now. The other thing with which to think about at this point is that I had mentioned 4,600. I believe on the last show, we couldn't quite crack that nut. We're not able to do that for any rallies this week, but definitely looking at that as well. But the final thing with which to mention on here is that on Friday, we actually closed at 4,500. We're at 40. We're in the mid 45s right now. So we are currently at 45, 49. So the S&P is still up 49 points on the week. And I don't know. I mean, if it's this bad of news, I would think that we'd at least have a negative week with it this bad of news. So, and that's from a stock market perspective. From the bond markets, it just looks like there's a chance that they may raise rates more than they initially thought that they would. So with that, I mean, I know we have a down day in the markets, but the thing to consider with this is that it's really not down all that much. And if you're in the bond world, then this is why you sell those covered calls. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, this response has been, I think, strange, to put it mildly. The fact that they were surprised by the rate of inflation that they underestimated, that's probably surprising in and of itself. And then, the fact that the market took a bit of a hit, maybe not surprising. And then the fact that it rallied as much as it did, I guess in hindsight, shouldn't be surprising given how we've reacted to just about every other sell-off we've had this year. But still, and then now we're selling off again. Yeah, I think you can charitably lump it into the life is strange type of category. Bunch of CPI Cowboys out there slinging away at these inflation numbers. The Fed's been arguing inflation's transitory forever, and here we are getting these real numbers now, and we're still surprised at the depth of the inflation. Just go out to your corner store or anywhere. You could see the real life impact of inflation, and have been for some time. It's interesting to me that we continue to be surprised. Some people, I guess, are buying into this line from the Fed that pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Speaking of which, we got a hardcore audience out there, listeners in the chat. Going back to our Valentine's Day discussion, they say an hour of rates talk is better than any flowers or chocolate. So there you go. Both you, Uncle Mike and Rock Lobster, need to sit your wives down on Valentine's Day and give them an uninterrupted hour of hardcore rates talk and then see what their response is. What do you guys think?
The thought of that makes me fear for my life.
Okay, wife, we're going to get on the boat with the 10-year note. How fast is whatever she has in her hand, how fast is that going to fly at your face, I wonder?
Very fast.
She just would be looking for an escape, I believe, is what there would be a quick and hasty retreat.
The ladies in our
studio.
The ladies in our chat saying they still like chocolates too. So they like rates, but they also like chocolate. So we have some voices of reason. Age, I'd like to know what your wife thinks of your hour of rates talk on Valentine's Day. She down for that? I would try that myself, but I would bore myself with an hour of rates talk. So I can't imagine what she would think of it. But I digress. That struck me as funny. What do you guys do for Valentine's Day? Is an hour of rates talk in the somewhere in the pantheon there of Valentine's Day celebrations? I'm guessing no, but we do have a very hardcore audience, so we'd like to hear from you folks. Let's see what's hardcore out there. Actually, before we get there, I'm neglecting the rockingest of lobsters. What am I doing? Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, when you're not busy dodging the projectiles that your wife is throwing at you because you've subjected her to an hour of rates talk. What else is lighting up your tape, sir?
Well, I agree with Mr. TOSAW. Here's what so this morning, I think we were actually, I I was able to sell some call spreads for some pretty good prices this morning in this SPY trade I had on. And I'm, now everything's kind of come off a little bit. There's some sadness now, market. I don't really know now. And actually, as I look at it, all the vol futures are at the highs of the day. So the vol futures VIX have been a pretty good indicator. And right now they're not looking good. So I am extremely happy I sold what I sold. As far as my calls, and now I'm riding. I had a little back spread going on, so I'm kind of just riding this. They took volatility got taken down to like 16% before vol even lower. If you're looking at some upside calendars and stuff, like 15.5%, which I thought way too low for this market. It's just not over. The inability to break below 20. We've documented, although it does continue to hit and bounce off 20 like a rubber biscuit. Not quite, I'm just saying not quite, this little late in the day rally, I'm just going to say an odd one. What's strong? You got banks, you have, oil stocks, things that are more inflation sensitive, commodity stocks doing well, tech not so good, retail's looking a little soft. So kind of a little bit of a mixed bag. Like a day like today, Boeing is up. So, in my mind, I would think this would be overall poor for volatility in general. But, because we're kind of vacillating here, a little less than 1% range. So again, I think the market is like it's a confusing day. I think they remember the whisper number in the old days, the whisper number. I felt like the inflation number was expected to come in.
I was bigger on the Greenspan's briefcase thickness number. That was my favorite.
That's right, the briefcase number.
It's 3.5 inches. Though. This is going to be bad.
Things are going bad. And that's when the Fed actually didn't do anything. They didn't need to, right? They just every once in a while they just jack up rates, and but now they're so intertwined in the markets. It would be nice if they would just get out and let things go and trade and all that kind of stuff. But I feel anyway. My opinions on this are well noted in the show. But what we have right now is I just think the market has to. I guess traders are gonna have to decide what's it going to be like to just take away the punch bowl. What is that going to look like? Are we going to go down to 10-15%? Or are we just going to kind of tread water here? So I think there's like a wait and see. And I think the surprising element that I've noticed this week is, and I've been writing about this in our internal, in all our internal notes and Option Pit, we do a lot of internal publishing now, is like the surprise narrative change on mandates and stuff like that. Like CNN, like masks are like states are getting rid of man. Like all of a sudden, I don't know. Either the polling numbers got bad, politicians are doing what they're doing, and they're changing their minds. So I find it interesting to say the least, which I thought was pretty bullish. You got the Omicron and all this crap going on, but Disney somehow manages to report huge park attendance and earnings. Huge, I think all time. So I think there is tremendous as a positive, because I know TOSAW is always the Uber bull, and with good reason, because market spends a lot of time going up. I think there's substantial, I think there's substantial reopening surprise, I think, left. To be honest, I think Biden could just declare victory. Everybody's got the vaccine, or 90% of the people that need it, and just say, hey, it's over. We won, and move along. Everybody is going to be fine. So I think there is that. I think that narrative changed during the week. I think it helped stocks stabilize against this inflation number. And now we're kind of hovering in sort of that space in between right now. So I thought vol would be much lower because the inflation number is out. And just right now, they can't quite decide on what to do. So, I think we're kind of sitting here seeing what happens. So we're kind of a little bit of in the Netherlands, so to speak, of the market today.
I do have a shocker follow-up for both of you. That listener who said he likes to give the ladies on Valentine's Day an hour of rates talk. He admits that he is single. So maybe there's something to do with his approach. He's going to put that on his dating profile. He says he's going to give you an hour of rates talk. So let us know how that goes. And that should be interesting. I'd be curious to see what kind of ladies respond to that outside of the bond pits, perhaps. But interesting. Actually, before we roll off of that, Mr. Rock Lobster, little birdie, told me before the show that perhaps, dare I say it, you might be joining the tinfoil hat crowd on crypto. What's going on there? What have you been up to? What have you been smoking over there on those shores of Maine since the last time I chatted with you?
So there's no question that I must be smoking something potent, because I heard something today that kind of, again, all rumor, but the guy that started Bitcoin was actually not some dude, but the U.S. government.
So right? Satoshi was like the Fed? Is that what you're saying?
The Fed, and what they wanted to do is set up an alternative currency and essentially bring all this so we can maintain dollar control. I know. So it hasn't been disproven or proven, but the whole idea of kind of bringing this whole getting in front of the currency thing, rise of China and all that, to maintain dollar hegemony. Anyway, I'm putting that out there. I wanted to announce it on this show because I know if anybody loves tinfoil hat stuff, it is the listeners of the option block. So I wanted to put something in. I heard this in my tinfoil. The propeller just went totally,
So Satoshi is really just Alan Greenspan. He's been laughing maniacally all this time in the background.
I guess Bernanke, I think it would be. It would be Bernanke, the best kept secret in all of crypto.
But yeah, they created it so long ago. It could have been Greenspan had his hand in it, way back in the early days. That kind of fits in with his objectivist dogma there. But there we go. I don't know. Mr. Uncle Mike, you're our resident crypto hater. What say you to this latest tinfoil hat notion that actually this is a creation of none other than the U.S. government, sir?
I'm just going to say that's just what they want you to think.
Exactly.
That's what I'll add to
Need to play a little X-Files music under all of this right now just to set the mood and get us kicked off YouTube. Why not?
There you go.
There we go. So we got so far we got some great theories on the show today so far. First off, we got hit your significant other on Valentine's Day with an hour of rates talk, and now we have all Bitcoin was created in stealth mode by the good old U.S. guy. I just love all these conspiracy theories because they always assume a level of competence on the part of the giant bureaucracy that is the U.S. government that we have never seen exhibited in real life. They can't keep a secret. They can't do anything. But in the conspiracy world, the government is deeply efficient. A handful of people can do amazing things, and no one ever finds out about it. So I wish the government was as competent in real life as the conspiracy theorists make them out to be. Alas, that is not the case. Let's see what is the case over there in the world of the markets, listeners. And actually got some paper lighting it up, which you might expect. When you got red on the screen, we got VIX starting to turn around a little bit. That's a recipe for a little bit of VIX paper as opposed to these gentle upside days and VIX coming off. Not a lot going up there. So VIX at about 442,000 contracts as of a few minutes ago. That's nothing to sneeze at, to use a double negative out there. ADV 684. So we are getting perilously close to that 700K level again, listeners. 16,000 contracts away from it. And we're back at 700K. So quite the worm turning just in the past couple of weeks. That ADV ticking up nearly 300,000 contracts. SPY, 4.2 million contracts. The ADV over 7 million now. 7.1 million pretty much out there in SPY. So SPY looking robust. SPX 750, so that's about a regular day's worth of volume. Not a lot lighting up the S, even though the ADV is still hanging out at about 1.8 million. That's a pretty firm ADV for the S. And small caps, at least the IWM flavor, 623. The ADV right now at about exactly 1 million. Still, again, if you want a deeper dive into small cap, stay tuned for TWTR a little bit later. We'll be hitting those along with rates and whatever the heck else is moving and shaking this week. You got to check out the show to find out. Most actives out there. Let's go to Cost you $309,000 to break into the top 10 today, most actives. That's a pretty robust day, listeners. Over 300K, you know things are moving. Things are starting to pop off. That gets you to the old school VALE, what the cool kids call VALE, Colorado. VALE, of course, that's out to Brazil. We talked about them a number of times. 309,000 contracts on this. I haven't seen them in the top 10 in quite some time. Let's go pull them up and see what our old friends VALE, quote unquote, is up to. They only up half a buck or 3.2%, but that's enough to break into the top 10 today, listeners. Number 9 is Ye Old Twitters. Haven't seen them in the top 10 in a while either. They're good for 326 today. And they're off, kind of pretty much unched off about a few cents. So not a huge move for them. Let's see if during the early part of the session, early part of the session, they were at 36 and a quarter. And then they ran all the way to about $39. So they had a nearly 3-point pop. Now they're giving that back up down to about 37 and 3/4. So they had a net decent move on the day. And again, good for 326,000 contracts. Number 8. You know, it's an interesting day when number AMD is all the way down at number 8. Still doing his usual volume around 400,000. 425 for number 8. So we're already north of 400K at number 8, listeners. That's a pretty robust day. Number 7, right behind it, NVIDIA. 517. We're already over 500,000. We're at number 7, listeners. It's one of those days. Let's go on out to number 6, the aforementioned Diz. I was just talking about them on the show not too long ago, about a little over a week ago, saying, man, they're back down to 138. That's pretty much the exact level that they were right before all this madness started popping off in March of 2020. They must have heard that because they popped pretty hard after that. And the earnings numbers are pretty good too, which is kind of surprising because this new CEO, I think to put it mildly, is not exactly a popular fellow. But one thing the street likes is cost cutting, and that's what this guy is doing. Unfortunately, he's kind of cutting to the bone, it seems like, over there. And that's probably in the long term, maybe not the best thing for the company, but the street liked it, at least in the near term. They popped it up to 156. Before kind of giving up the ghost, now back down to about a little bit shy of 152. Still on a nice run, still up from that 138 level that was just a little over a week ago. So a nice little rebound there for Diz. Of course, at the end of the day, if you're cutting costs and the stock is up, the street will cheer you. You'll keep your job. If your stock hasn't been doing that great outside of this past week for Disney. So that's kind of the metric that the shareholders are interested in, and that's how you keep your job. So there are rumors of perhaps a vote of no confidence for this guy. We shall see. Again, not exactly the most popular guy, but if the numbers are looking good, he'll keep his gig. Speaking of bad numbers, Facebook has been the king of bad numbers of late, listeners, and they're back in the top 10. Number 5 today, 571, off another almost $3 or a little over 1%, 229 right now for Facebook. That's still off the lows they hit of 217 back on Tuesday. So they have rebounded from that about 12 handles. But still, not exactly a great week for Facebook. Number 4, AMC. AMC back in our top 10. Haven't seen both of the symbol twins in the new symbol twins. We haven't seen our old friends of Bank of America and Boeing in there in quite some time. So the new symbol twins of AMC, I haven't seen the other half in there in a while, but AMC looking robust today. Number 4, 644,000 contracts. It's at about 19 and a quarter right now, up about a third of a handle. Got up to, looks like about 20 and 3/4. So it was feeling a little bit of this turnaround love earlier in this morning, rallying from 17.90 to 20 and 3/4 before giving it back up now to 19 and a quarter. So quite the day out there in AMC today. And again, good for 644,000 contracts. Number 3. Yes, I said number 3. It's Tesla, 710 out there. So intriguing stuff out there in Tesla land. Let's see what our friend Tesla is up to right now. 915 and about a half, off 16 and a half handles. They got down to 907 earlier today. Then they rallied up to about 942, almost 943 before giving it back up again. So it's kind of been a wild, topsy-turvy day out there as well. Number 2 is the fruit company. It's Apple. 721,000. Apple's been kind of locked to that 700K level. It seems like during earnings season, a lot of other names come along to steal their thunder a little bit. So Apple kind of, I use languish in air quotes because it's still number 2, but it's not at the 1.4 million level we see a lot of times at this time of day. Off about 1 3/4% for Apple, so kind of taking it down today after rallying early in the session up to about 175 and a third. And number 1, the big dog on the option street today is actually Uber, a name we haven't seen in the top 10 in quite some time, off nearly 5%. Good for about 800,000 contracts on the tape right now. Started the day at 41 and change, got up to 42, almost and a half, then got clipped to 38 and a quarter. That's kind of where it is right now. So kind of an aggressive turnaround out there in Uber. Speaking of aggressive numbers, let's get on out to these numbers here from our friends over there at OIC. We haven't had a chance to do them yet, but the numbers are in for January. Listeners, the 2022 January total volume numbers, as well as we know the numbers for all of 2021 now. But yeah, people kept wondering. I was asking myself, we've been asking this every year when the year starts, can this crazy madness continue? Do all these players who have entered the markets over these past year and a half or so, and even in the past 6 months, are all of them hanging out? Are they staying around? Are they going to keep trading? The answer for the beginning of the year, listeners, arguably one of the most important reports we get all year from a numbers perspective, is a resounding yes. January, 897.6 million contracts. That's closing in. Like I said, we've been threatening that 1 billion level, that 1B level per month. Haven't quite gotten there. We've gotten up to like 930 or so, I think. But January, 897. That's up almost 6.5% from the insane January of last year, which was the meme stock palooza. We're already up above that. And it's also the busiest January in the history of the business. So once again, we're off to that again, where every month is going to be, at least so far, the busiest ever, whatever month it is. Busiest February, busiest March, busiest January. So if we keep on this pace, listeners, and again, we just had the Flowmaster on Tuesday, and he's the guy who does this for a living all day long. And he was thinking we're definitely on a pace to beat last year's number this year, at least come in maybe around a 10.8 or so. And again, if we're threatening close to 1 billion contracts a month, that gets us well over 10 billion contracts as well. So yeah, we hit almost 10 billion. That was an outrageous number for last year. At least so far, we are on pace to beat it again, listeners. So yeah, looks like so far, listeners, it's going to be another one of those crazy years. So buckle in. If you were expecting things to quiet down a little bit, people to stop maybe piling into the options market, I say nay. They're coming in hot and heavy yet again. You know what else is hot and heavy right now? Our earnings got big names popping off all week. Monday, we had Hasbro out in the toy land. Tuesday, Pfizer, BP, and Peloton. So quite a sampling. Peloton, man, they've been all over the place lately as well. Wednesday, CVS, Diz, the aforementioned Diz and Uber, and Zynga and Mattel. Today, we got Coke and Pepsi. I love that they both go off on the same day. There's some cosmic balance to that. AstraZeneca and Twitter. And the old Duck, a.k.a. Duke Energy. Tomorrow, we got Under Armour. Let's look really quickly. We have a report for today for Mattel. Let's go to Mattel. They were yesterday after the bell. 22 3/4 is where they were trading as of this report. They were pricing in 7.2%. They delivered 10%. So Toy Vol outperforming, listeners. By the way, all these numbers coming in hot off the presses from our friends over there at ORATS. Head on over to theoptionsinsider.com. They'll be up there today so you guys can sink your teeth into them. All the latest earnings move results, earnings season, and earnings trades reports for you. Let's go out to the Duck. The Duck was this morning before the bell, ticker symbol DUK, listeners. And let's see, they were at 104 3/4 going into their announcement. They were pricing in 2.1%. They delivered, get this, listeners, 2.1%. That's old school. Disney, let's see, despite all that news and that big pop, they actually underperformed. They were pricing in 6.5%. They delivered 5.8%. Now, of course, this is one of those days where you wait 5 minutes and you might get some of that back. But when we ran the numbers, that's what they had done. PepsiCo, they were yesterday after the bell. About 172 is where they were trading as of this report. They were pricing in 2.1%. They delivered 1.3%. So not a lot of juice to be found in the beverage hills. Uber, the aforementioned Uber, they were yesterday after the bell as well. They were at about $40.20 when they popped off. They were pricing in 9.6%. They delivered, at the time of this report, 3.9%. This is another one of those where I think if you wait 5 minutes, you're looking a little bit better if you're on the long premium side, down about 38. So they're well below, where they were as of that report. Let's see really quickly. Twitter, they were today before the bell. 37.83 is where they were trading. They were pricing in, get this, listeners, 15.1%. They delivered 1.1%. That's an old school pandemic report there. A whole heck of a lot of nothing. Wow, we haven't seen one of those in a little bit. Speaking of the pandemic and the season, we are hanging out right now at 89%, listeners. Week 1, 102%, so outperformance there. Week 2, abysmal, 67%. Week 3, 97%, so almost breaking even. And then week 4 so far, 104%. We're making money this week, listeners. So interesting stuff. Earnings trades, man, they got a ton. They got a calendar going on in Disney, a calendar in Twitter, Calendar and AstraZeneca, whole bunch of straddles and ITT, another straddle and cyber. They got a ton, listeners. So if you want to check out some interesting earnings trades, I should say, buying straddles, selling straddles, buying calendars. I don't see any short calendars. They have done a few of those in the past. That's a bit of a funkier trade, but don't see those yet. But check out that report at the very least. It's got some cool ideas for you, and it's got it all in there. Check all that out. We got a bunch of earnings move results reports for you to check out as well for all the names that are upcoming. But meanwhile, you know what's upcoming for the show? It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild, we unleash the eye of Sauron upon the unwitting markets, and we see what it returns to us. And today, I do believe this is a newcomer. This is EOG Resources. This is an energy company out of Houston, and they engage in hydrocarbon exploration. And they are ticker symbol EOG, as you would imagine, trading right now about 112.70 or so, off about 0.6% on the day. On the year, let's see. They had a good year, as you might imagine. Anyone out there in hydrocarbon exploration, easy for me to say. Anyone out there in hydrocarbon exploration probably had a decent year. A year ago, they were trading about $60, a little bit shy of it. And they've had pretty much mostly straight up with a little bit of a sojourn. They got up to $83 in July. They gave some of it back then, back down to 64 and change. That was kind of the only real big sell-off they had this year. The rest of the year has been pretty much straight up to where they find themselves right now. 112.76, up about $52.50, or an 87% rally on the year. That's not too shabby, listeners. And let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. Looks like maybe someone, Mr. Rock Lobster, is deciding they like this upside. And if it continues, they wouldn't mind dumping some of this stock at these newly inflated levels. But they don't want to do it just here. They don't want to sell, like, let's say, a 112 or a 110 or 115 call. They want to give themselves a little bit more room to run. Clearly, they think hydrocarbons have a little bit more upside to them because they came out and said, you know what, I'm going to sell the 125 calls. I'm going to do it in March. I'm going to do it 8,227 times for $2.20. That's a 38.5 vol, if you are wondering, listeners. The stock was a little bit higher when they did these. They're already looking good. That stock was 115 when they put these up. And then they came and did more. They did 4,574 more for 232 when the stock was a little bit higher. So they crushed that first. Actually, that was first. They crushed that first because they were 232 or 262. They crushed those 4,500 times. Then they came back in and said, how are they now? And they sold the remaining 82.27 at 220 after that. So that they got 12 cents worse in the second print, listeners. But yeah, a total of over 12,000 of these bad boys have traded today. Mr. Rock Lobster, somebody crushing that upside strike, getting nearly a 40 vol to do it. So you can't really hate this one because if it gets taken away, they're still giving themselves another 12.5 strikes to the upside, and they sell it out at the top, and they got a decent amount of juice to do it. So you can't really hate this one, Mr. Rock Lobster. What say you?
I don't hate this one. This is the hydrocarbons has been a very big bull flag. Just the whole call buying has been crazy, commodities. So I have to say, I don't, overall, I think this is this one appears to be looks like some kind of buy right, but, I think, or I would assume it's a buy right. But most of the paper actually has been pretty just straight bullish, just like buy stuff. So I'm just letting you know, I've seen more just straight risk reversal type plays like buy call, sell put spreads than I've seen buy rights actually this week.
Well, that makes sense because oil has done nothing but shoot straight up. That's also why someone actually selling some upside in oil is kind of interesting because you haven't seen a lot of it of late. You're right. But intriguing stuff. I know you're a big hydrocarbon bull, Mr. Rock Lobster, so maybe you fancy this one as well. Maybe you're putting it in the old Rock Lobster portfolio. We shall see. As we turn the tables, let's go out to a, shall we say, controversial name. This one has been mired in controversy for years now. This is Herbalife. Haven't talked about them in quite some time. This has kind of been the on again, off again. They're fighting. Is it a scam? Is it not? All this nonsense. It seems like some of that has mitigated a bit, maybe why they haven't been on our radar in a while. Herbalife, ticker symbol HLF, trading right now $42 exactly. Up a little bit today, up about $0.50 today. Let's see. We haven't talked about them in a while. Let's look at the past year. Oh, Herbalife, not surprisingly, they got caught up in the meme frenzy a year ago. So they're actually down on the year. A year ago, they were trading, let's see, 58, almost $60. Let's go back a little bit farther. Let's see. How high did they get in the big poppage? Yeah, about $60. 60.32 was the high. Pretty much, if you go a little bit beyond a year, that's right, early February. That's right where they topped out. So they got driven all the way up to $60. And then they pretty much gave a good chunk of it back. By February 22nd, they were back down to 45. So they got clipped again. But then they tried to rally again. They got to 55.5 on our favorite day, listeners, June 8th. That's where they topped out. And then they gave it all back again, down to $47. Then they tried to rally again, $53. So below the June 8th level, but close to it on September 10th and 13th. Then they got crushed. They went from 54.25 to 42 in one overnight session. So obviously some bad earnings. And then they've kind of been bouncing in this mid-40s range ever since. Got up to 47 again, then sold off to 37.5 actually in December, before rallying again to $45 and then back down to where it is right now. I'm exhausted just looking at this chart. Imagine if you've been trading this thing all year. This thing is just nuts. Let's see if there's any latest news, any claims of tomfoolery out here with this name. But yeah, this one's been a long-standing contentious name. And right now, listeners, we got someone, and maybe they're a little bit tired of this as well. Someone coming in and deciding, you know what? This thing's a freaking roller coaster. I'm just going to stop myself out at the 20 strike. So pretty much a 50% cut off the top, trading $42 right now. And they're going out to Jan 2024. So they're giving themselves a lot of time and saying, you know what? I just want to sleep at night. Maybe they're long from somewhere around the 20 handle, somewhere in that level. And they say, you know what? I just can't. I don't want to sell this thing, but I also can't take losing money on it maybe anymore. So I'm going to, or the threat of it, the prospect of it. So they bought 4,500 of the Jan 2024 20 puts. Again, pretty much half of where it's trading right now. They paid $1.35 for these bad boys. That's about a 51 vol. The stock was a little bit higher, 42.5 when they put these up. And let's see, there obviously are earnings between now and Jan of 2024. The next is going to be on February 23rd. So Mr. Rock Lobster, it seems like maybe someone's got a little Herbalife fatigue. And I guess looking at this chart, I can't really fault them. If any, you can fault them for anything, it's maybe the fact that the protection they get, 50% out of the money puts, I kind of put that as down as protection in air quotes, sir. What do you think? This is where you hit that mute button and tell us your fabulous thoughts.
I just like talking into the mic when it's blinking. You actually got me a mic where the mute blinks and I still
can't do it. I don't know what else I can do for you, sir. I need a little electric shock buzzer, and I can just hit the button on my end, remind you to unmute. That's what I'm going to do next.
So this one, very, very, very interesting puts. So wow. This is either a line in the sand putville or, again, wow, this is right in the middle. This is a tough one.
Yeah, I should mention the market was very wide. It was 95 cents at $1.60. Obviously, the 2-year out Herbalife puts, not exactly liquid.
Right. So did the Flowmaster have any? I don't have really any inkling on it. Like kind of right in the middle, 40 cents off the bid. So I'm assuming somebody paid $1.35 for these $20 out of the money puts.
That was my inclination as well. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, we put this in the category of a kissing your sister trade for effectiveness.
It's a pricey sister you're kissing there.
Yes. So again, that's a 5% yield. 5% yield for a year and almost 2 years. Like, I don't know. There's nothing about this trade that I find remotely interesting at all, unfortunately. So tell Gene, I'm sorry, but this one's like right in the middle, weird prices, bad yield. And if you're buying them, where are they? I guess they could move at some point, but you're definitely, it's a somewhat apocalyptic you would need to have any kind of real win there.
Yeah, these are not my favorite either. We'll put them in to be watched, but I don't know if we're going to be coming back to Herbalife in 2 years. Maybe we shall see, listeners. Crazier things have happened. Speaking of coming back to things, let's come back to one more put before we get the heck out of Dodge here. Let's go to, where are we here? We're going to Bloom Energy, listeners. This was the December 20th show from last year. We talked about a line in the sand. Somebody wrote, in Bloom Energy Corp, on the 15 strike, they sold about 11,000 of the 15 puts expiring in January for 16 cents. So right off the bid, that was still almost an 80 vols. These are pretty juicy. The stock at the time was almost $21, $20.92. So these were not that aggressive of a line in the sand. You needed a pretty aggressive move for these to pay off, or I should say to really not pay off, to scare you, to threaten you. And you know what? They almost got that move, listeners, because these things, this Bloom Energy took a bit of a hit, to put it mildly, after this trade went up. So this trade went up on December 20th, and then pretty much the stock went straight down from there. It actually did. It did break the 15 strike, just not before expiration. This guy lucked out by a week because the stock went out at 15.58 on expiration Friday, listeners. And literally a couple of sessions later, it was at 14.5. And by the end of the next week, it was 13.22. So he sold these puts for 16 cents, which is not much. He barely skated by the skin of his teeth. They were still open at expiration, by the way. So he pocketed not quite $200,000, about $178,000. He had to sweat for it, and he was thanking the market gods that he picked the Jan and not the Feb, because if he had sold the Feb, they would have been nearly $2 in his face by a couple of sessions later. So this is one where he missed it by that much, as they used to say on, I forgot what show that was, but intriguing stuff. Mr. Rock Lobster, looks like somebody skating through by the skin of his teeth, sir, in some Bloom Energy puts.
I believe Get Smart is missed it by that much.
Yes, there it was. I knew it was an old one, so you would know what it was. Yes,
you need somebody old and infirm and slightly addled to remember.
That's the kind of reference our 20-plus age, newcomer to the options market audience loves.
Yes. Get Smart.
He had a phone in his shoe. Think of that, a phone in his shoe. How cutting edge was that?
Yes, it's a show your kids can watch now and not be totally offended and slapped upside the head by bizarre references.
I know that Agent 99, she was pretty sultry. That's all I'm saying.
She was, but I think she was very sultry, but yet modest, I guess, but and funny. Bloom Energy, interesting one here. I'm seeing a little. I think what did $5 billion for interstate. $5 billion coming out of Mr. Biden, President Biden, for interstate charging stations. So I don't know if Bloom Energy is a beneficiary of that, but you start throwing around the $1 billion word and people get quite excited about that. So I would just say on that score, that's a pretty big, that's a big boost, a big pop. To the green energy industry, and Bloom was one of these stocks that, what was it? How high was it this year? $36. Right before the Build Back Better got smashed, and then the whole every green stock dropped by about 50 to 70% since the spending tap went dry. So here in Bloom Energy. Again, I think this is pretty classic line in the sand put. You hit it on the head. And this is a stock I have on my list with my compatriot, Frank Gregory, at Capital Gains, our product we run looking for basically, upcoming trends and then fit the option.
Oh, so you sold these puts. So you skated through by the skin of your teeth. That was you. Okay. Makes sense now.
I don't think this is a terrible, I don't think this is a terrible idea, but this is one that's already has in the rearview mirror. So it looks like they might have gotten away with this one.
And let's see if you guys got away with some great questions. It is time for the Mailblock.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mailblock.
All right, everybody, let's get out to our question of the week first. Going hot and heavy right now. We asked you at the beginning of the week if you had to buy a 10% out of the money call expiring end of the year, December 31st, on one of the following names. We didn't give you an other this week because you guys kind of dropped the ball on the other last time. I was disappointed in your other responses. So we gave you 4 choices this time. Which one would you choose? Peloton, Facebook, Robinhood, all 3 names that have, shall we say, come under pressure of late, even though Peloton looking a little bit better these days. And then, of course, you threw in the macro name. You threw in the SPX/SPY. And right now, it's still hot and heavy between Facebook and SPY. So Facebook at about 34.5%, SPY a little bit over 31% right now. So a lot of you still looking for a nice 10% pop in the S throughout the end of the year. So the Uncle Mike bulls are still in full effect out there. And then Peloton at nearly 20%, just a tick under it. And Robinhood bringing up the rear at nearly 15%. That's interesting because Robinhood won our poll last week. So maybe opinions have changed from last week to this week. Robinhood has continued to kind of trend down as names like Peloton and others have popped up a little bit this week. So, and of course, who knows what the hell's happening with Facebook? That's been just a drubbing out there of late. But get out there if you haven't done so already. At Options is the place to go. We pinned it for your convenience, so you can go find that question of the week. Speaking of questions and comments, Mr. Rock Lobster, I think you have infected some of our live listeners with your tinfoil craziness because we have Unlimited in our chat saying, I did hear a rumor that the United States government is behind the crypto ransom attacks. Oh. And also, what do they do with all the Bitcoin that they seized? And that's a good point. I'm sure they disclose it somewhere what they do with it, but I have not heard where they liquidate it or what I don't think they hold it. And then he also goes on to say, I never heard the U.S. created Bitcoin, but I do know Silk Road, and that was used by drug dealers. Yes, a very infamous one. And the guy that created it worked with Satoshi. And just 2 years later, when the Silk Road gained enough customers, the FBI came in and seized everything. And they got all the locations and bank accounts of drug dealers, and they went after them. Yeah, that's kind of, just look at that seizure they just did, right, in New York. Just this week, $3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, stolen Bitcoin. So obviously this stuff not quite as anonymous as you think. They were keeping an eye on some of those wallets from some earlier thefts that happened years ago. And the second that Bitcoin started to move, that they were on those folks and they seized them. So yeah, interesting stuff. Mr. Rock Lobster, what do you say? You're infecting our audience with your tinfoil hat nonsense.
Like I said, I believe that our audience is already ripe for such tinfoilness. So they're ready to hear the madness. But it's good that I got some confirmation by one.
Yes,
by at least one person.
One person agrees with your madness, yes. Sir. He's also the guy who hodls like all the Shiba Inu. So just bear that in mind out there. But he has agreed to buy at least me a Lambo when Shiba pops. Not so much you. But I get a Lambo if Shiba moves, so I'm deeply invested now in all things.
I want you to have a Lambo, and then the lovely Jean were like, "But you can't drive it. You can have it, but you can't drive it."
I think Uncle Mike might get a Yugo just to mock him for his hatred of crypto, but you get nothing. Sir. That's what you get for your tinfoil hatness. Speaking of Uncle Mike, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, I like your thoughts. If you have thoughts on the crypto, have at it. But I more like your thoughts on our question of the week right now, because it's kind of surprising me that we have fully a third of our audience saying, forget these names that have been beaten up by the pandemic recently. I'm expecting a 10% pop in the S by the end of the year. What say you, sir? Are you firmly in that bullish camp as well?
Well, I own out-of-the-money call spreads on the SPX and SPY, so I guess that would put me in there. But I will say that, and I do own them 1 year out, so or in December, I should say.
So I guess by default, you are in that SPX category, sir.
I have to be, and that's the basis of, well, my whole financial existence in a lot of ways. But the other thing I would say is that in second place, if the S&P wasn't in there, I wouldn't mind doing something with Facebook because they really got the tar beat out of them, and they're a pretty well managed, and they're pretty good at what they do. And so I think they got beat up a little bit more than they deserved. So that would probably be my second place.
Is that going to be part of the strategic night anytime soon?
Out of the money calls? No.
But a holding in Facebook?
I don't know if I'm allowed to disclose such a thing, but I will say this. I know that there are some clients that I have, and here and there I do have it as a holding for some of my clients that I'm managing outside the strategic night. Whether or not it's in the strategic night, I don't know if the compliance people would allow me to say such a thing. Sorry.
Indeed. That's no fun. But it is fun. It is a name, right? It has been beaten up quite a bit. So if you do think it's going to turn around, we have talked about things like stock repair and other trades before. You don't need Facebook to go all the way back to where it was to make some money on that trade. So if you're in that camp, it's intriguing. I kind of thought that Facebook, and Facebook is doing well. I kind of thought it would be a little higher, or maybe Robinhood would kind of run away with it again, or given what we've seen with Peloton recently, Peloton would kind of take the lead. But yeah, the S is holding firmly in there. Listeners, if you haven't voted, get over there to add options, because I want to get your pulse on all this stuff, because that's a surprising one to me, given all these names we have out there right now, that people are still holding firm to this strong upside tail in the SPX.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, let's go around the block. Let's start with the unclest of Mike's. Mr. Uncle Mike, when you're not putting on size upside in Facebook and all these other names, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week?
Watching the 4,500 mark in the SPX, just seeing where we're going to go with that. Right now, we're making a run at it. We're getting closer to it. So watching that. Also watching support right now in the 10-year note. This was a level of support a while back. So we'll see where we go with that. I think that news is out right now. CPI was the scary thing. Now that the news is out, let's see what the buyers and sellers really think of this over the course of the next few days.
Yeah, let's see if that BTFD crowd can come back in again, or if they are exhausted for the time being, and their energy is spent. His energy is never spent, at least to the dark side. He is the Rock Lobster. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are you keeping an eye on for until we can gather here together on the show on Monday?
I similar to Mike. We have a little sell-off going. We got a little pop in VIX with which I feel is basically a known number. Like, it wasn't. I don't think this was a surprise that the CPI was going to come in hot. You got, the Canadian truckers and not letting people go across Detroit. All this stuff is probably not good for inflation, unless you like really high inflation. So I find it like this is all what I would call major news is out as one current. And then the other current is, I think, the reopen trade. So I still think this will be it's still going to end up settling a little better than we think, but I could be totally wrong. But the fact that we really can't get the giddy up on the sell-off here, I look at that and I go, it looks like we kind of tested some levels and then kind of bounced again. So the sellers don't have a ton of conviction, I would say.
It's like nobody has conviction today. We're all over the place today, but those are the markets we're living in these days. Listeners, reminder, if you want more of these markets, including a deep dive into all things rates, we put up the rates signal, aka row, and people have responded for TWTR coming up in about exactly a half an hour. So if you're listening live, just stay tuned. If you're listening after the fact, just hit next on your device of choice. We'll be going deep into all things rates and CPI fun and all that good stuff. But before we do that, let's go back around the horn. Mr. Uncle Mike. Mr. Uncle Mike, if folks want to hit you up and talk about rates or Facebook or any of these other things, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, since my wife won't talk to me about interest rates, feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW. I'm putting out a lot more content as the year goes on. Just put out something earlier this week on rates. So check me out on Twitter or go to my website, stcharleswealth.com. The article itself is up there as well. If you are looking for a financial advisor who will talk interest rates and be happy to have an opinion on them, as well as the option product, feel free to reach out to me. You can check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. And as the weeks go by, there will be more videos on the YouTube channel for St. Charles Wealth Management. A lot of content out there, folks.
You got a ready audience waiting for you to talk rates, so you don't need to bore your wife with it. You can do your whole row webinar. They're ready and willing, sir.
Wow.
Wow. Check them out, stcharleswealth.com, to learn more, listeners. And Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks want to talk to you about line in the sand puts in Bloom Energy, which you skated through on the skin of your teeth, or anything else, where should they go? What should they do?
OptionPit.com. Go to products I manage, Capital Gains, Vol Trade Club, Trading Legion. Got a lot of good stuff going on in all of those products. So if you want to learn how to trade, also manage our pro group and our Edge Hunter sheets. So I don't know. I'm so busy, my brain might fall out. So, and tonight we have a webinar at 8 o'clock. If you go to the Option Pit website, you can get a link about alternative trades here in the new higher interest rate area. So if you want to learn that stuff, come on in tonight, 8 o'clock at OptionPit.com.
I do love you still run sheets. I love it. It's 1997 all over again in the land of the pit. Good stuff. Get your sheets over there. Get your sheets. Are they still physical sheets or are they all digital now? I want physical sheets in my hand.
They're all digital.
That's not a sheet. That's just a web page. I want sheets.
I know.
If I can't flip them and I don't have to flip really quickly to keep up with the smooths, they're not sheets. It's just nonsense. All right. If they're not giant legal or letter-sized prints and they don't even fit in your pocket, they're not sheets, Leslie. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you missed the glorious era of trading on the floor over there in the 90s. Good stuff. Check them out over there in the land of the pit, optionpit.com to learn more. We got to get on out of here, but we'll be back again, 26 minutes now for all things TWIFO. Back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for volatility views, and then back again after that for you Secret Club cool kids, talking about a whole bunch of oddities there after that. Then back again on Monday, another episode of the Option Block. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.